Before we begin our story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment with your feedback on our stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The year was 3147. Humanity had long since transcended its humble origins on Earth, spreading across an ever-expanding galaxy to form vast colonies and powerfully armed fleets. Yet from the depths of space, an enemy of unimaginable nature loomed, the Zenith Dominion, a relentless race of biomechanical conquerors whose war against humanity had dragged on for over a century. Deep within the fringes of occupied territory, where forgotten worlds and ghostly outposts whispered legends of past glories, a broken soldier and a rogue scientist became unlikely bearers of mankind's fate. They would hold the key to salvation, or the harbinger of ultimate destruction. In a dimly lit, smoke-filled cantina on Vespera 9, a forsaken asteroid outpost carved into jagged rock formations, Captain Elias Vance nursed a drink that carried the bitter tang of engine coolant and regret. Once heralded as a hero whose valor shone bright amid the chaos of interstellar war, Vance now existed as something far less glamorous, a relic haunted by loss, a ghost drifting between duty and resignation. His eyes, once alight with the fervor of youthful idealism, now reflected only deep sorrow and the weight of years spent fighting against an enemy that always seemed one step ahead. Around him, the usual denizens of this forgotten corner of space milled about, grizzled smugglers with stories of near escapades, bounty hunters with calculating stares and weapons ever at the ready, and ex-military outcasts who carried their own unspoken burdens. The atmosphere was thick with despair and a tacit understanding that in this part of the galaxy, hope was a luxury few afforded. It was in this very moment, as Vance stared blankly into the swirling amber of his drink, that a new presence made itself known. A slender figure with auburn hair pulled back into a tight ponytail and eyes that burned with mechanical intensity and desperate hope slid into the seat directly opposite him. "You're not easy to find," she murmured, her voice low and husky, as if burdened by secrets that could shatter worlds. Her inquisitive gaze swept the room, always on alert, before settling back on him. Vance managed a wry, crooked smile that bore the scars of too many battles. "That's the point. What do you want, Doc?" Her reply was measured as she placed a small hollow drive on the scarred tabletop between them. The device activated immediately, projecting a blue, ghostly schematic into the air, a detailed representation of an enormous Zenith warship. But this was no ordinary vessel. It pulsed as if alive, an entwining of organic matter with cold, precise machinery. "This isn't just a ship, Doctor," Lyra Cade whispered, her tone laced with both reverence and urgency. "It's their core. The very heart of the Dominion. If we can destroy it, we can cripple them, permanently." At that, Vance exhaled slowly. For years he'd resigned himself to a legacy of missed chances and failures. Once a decorated capstone of human valor, he now regarded himself as a tad lost, a man untethered from the cause that had once defined him. Yet the tremor in Lyra's carefully held hands, the sincerity in her eyes, lit a spark of recognition deep within him. Perhaps this was not just another desperate mission. Perhaps it was the one that could rekindle the dying embers of human resistance. Born on a war-torn Earth, when hope and chaos danced side by side, Elias Vance had once been the embodiment of valor and unyielding determination. As a young officer, he had carved a reputation through daring rescues and last-minute victories. His exploits, sung in hushed tones by soldiers around campfires, had earned him the title of the Unbreakable. But war is a cruel teacher. With every battle, every loss of comrades, the brilliant flame of heroism sometimes dimmed beneath the weight of unspoken guilt. By the time the Zenith Dominion's relentless assault began, Vance had seen too many of his ideals reduced to ashes, too many dreams shattered under the relentless march of destiny. Now, he drifted like a specter among those who had once called him an icon. Even as he nursed his drink in the darkened cantina, memories of past battles flashed unbidden through his mind, images of comrades falling, of a once proud flagship consumed by enemy plasma, of the quiet moments when the victories felt hollow and the cost too dearly paid. And yet, buried beneath the grief, there was an ember of defiance that would not starve completely. Across the table, Dr. Lyra Cade carried a burden of her own. Once celebrated within the Terran Research Initiative for her breakthroughs in xenobiology and quantum neural systems, she had been ensnared by the schemes of higher powers, those willing to sacrifice ethical research on the altar of war. Branded a heretic and forced into exile when the Zenith Dominion declared total war, Lyra had roamed the frontier worlds, her brilliant mind constantly pursued by assassins and traitors alike. Now, her existence was defined by a single, desperate mission: to provide humanity with a fighting chance through knowledge stolen from the enemy itself. Her auburn hair, cut in a practical ponytail, betrayed her youth, but her eyes, sharp, scanning every detail, spoke of a wisdom forged in the fire of loss. As she presented the holodrive, the intricate schematics illuminated her face with an eerie blue glow. To her, the design of the Zenith core vessel was not merely a map of metal and circuitry, but a symphony of secrets and potential salvation. Every line and contour held the key to unlocking a vulnerability in the Dominion's armor. "You knew I'd come," she said softly to Vance, leaning in confidentially. "I've been tracking this design for months. The Zenith don't build such warships lightly. There's something different about this one." Vance's gaze hardened as he studied her, reading in those eyes the familiar flicker of hope long extinguished in his own. "Then tell me everything, document. I'm listening." The plan was audacious, born from desperation and tempered by necessity. Known as the Revenant, the stolen Zenith vessel was one of the few captured intact, a marvel of alien engineering reconfigured for human purposes. Its sleek, insect-like design glimmered with a sinuous, bioorganic sheen, as if the craft was both alive and a predator among the stars. Vance and Lyra knew that commandeering such a ship was as much a theft as it was an act of war, an act that would write a new chapter in humanity's struggle for survival. As they boarded the Revenant in a secret docking bay on a forgotten moon base, Lyra ran her hand reverently along the pulsating control panels. The surfaces responded to her touch, as though recognizing the familiar cadence of human heartbeat rhythms. A nervous tremor ran through Vance. "You sure this thing won't turn on us?" he muttered, his fingers tightening around his pulse rifle, a weapon as reliable as his own grit. Lyra's tone was confident despite the tension. "I reprogrammed the neural core. It recognizes us as its pilots. The Zenith may have designed it to adapt, but I've shown it that we are in control now." For a moment, silence fell. In those quiet spaces between their words, the weight of their shared burden pressed upon them, a heavy reminder that this ship, this mission, might be humanity's last lifeline. With no time to waste, the duo launched the Revenant into Zenith-controlled territory, a perilous expanse known as the Omega Expanse, a region where no human vessel had ever returned intact. As they broke through the shields of Dominion patrols, alarms screamed across the Revenant's control panels. 3 Dominion sentry ships, sleek and blade-like, materialized from the void, their bioorganic hulls shimmering with lethal intent. "Hold on!" Lyra shouted, engaging the ship's organic thrusters. The Revenant twisted and wove through blocks of plasma fire, a creature of chaotic beauty evading the beastly might of its pursuers. Vance manned the pulse cannons, his steady hand and relentless focus returning volley after volley of deadly energy into the enemy ranks. Then, in a moment that defied conventional warfare, the largest of the sentry ships reached out, not with a barrage of missiles, but in a silent telepathic communication. There was no vocal transmission, only an overwhelming mental voice that echoed through the Revenant's very core: "You should not be here, humans." Vance felt a chill run down his spine. The Zenith had long mastered telepathy, a hive mind that linked all their forces with chilling cohesion. But Lyra, ever the innovator, had whispered of a secret weapon, a neural disruptor modified from Terran research, capable of fracturing that unyielding mental network. With determined precision, she activated the disruptor. In a burst of erratic energy, the enemy ships convulsed mid-space, their coordinated transmissions falling into disarray. One by one, the sentry vessels fell silent, their engines sputtering as if strangled by their own internal discord. "Let's go before they recover," Lyra urged, her voice trembling not from fear but adrenaline. Together, they pressed on, toward the Zenith stronghold, toward the core of a monstrous empire. The Zenith core was a sight that defied description, a vast, cathedral-like structure of pulsing biotech which hovered at the center of a sinister nebula. Surrounding the core, the wreckage of shattered enemy ships lay strewn like fallen leaves. The Revenant glided silently as it searched for an entry. Lyra pointed to a narrow, almost imperceptible gap in the outer hull. "There," she said. "A docking port. We go in on foot." Vance's heart sank as he strapped on his combat armor and hefted his pulse rifle. "I hate this plan already," he mumbled, the tension in his voice betraying both resignation and grim determination. They stepped out into a corridor that defied reality. The walls seemed to breathe and pulse, twisting as though alive. The ambient light shifted in irregular patterns, casting dancing shadows that appeared to whisper of ancient secrets. Every step they took echoed in a hollow sound that made their skin prickle with unease. Soon, the sense of isolation was broken by movement, a low hum that crescendoed into a symphony of mechanical growls. Zenith sentinels, towering biomechanical warriors with glowing, unblinking eyes, emerged from the living walls. Their limbs moved with predatory grace as they advanced steadily. "Run!" Lyra shouted, and the duo bolted through the shifting corridors. Pulse fire streaked the air behind them as Vance fired desperately at the advancing sentinels. His shots, though precise, barely left a mark on the heavily armored defenders. The labyrinthine passageways twisted and folded, and every turn brought them closer to what appeared to be a chamber marked as the core. At the threshold of this mysterious chamber, the walls abruptly peeled away to reveal a scene so surreal it stopped Vance in his tracks. Standing in the center, shrouded in half-light, was a figure not of zenith origin, a human, unmistakably so. And as the figure stepped forward, a voice echoed in the cavernous hall. "You have come too far, Elias Vance." Vance froze, his pulse rifle clutched tightly. The voice was achingly familiar, a mirror image of his own inner doubts and forgotten dreams. The figure emerged from the shadows, revealing features so similar to Vance's that he struggled to reconcile the impossibility before him. His own face, his own bearing, stared back with an unsettling smirk. "Do not be alarmed," the doppelganger said with a calm that belied the chaos of their surroundings. "In some measures, I am you. Or rather, I am what the Zenith have crafted, a version of you that knows no weakness, no doubt." Lyra's voice, quivering as she scanned with her portable device, was filled with disbelief. This isn't possible. Cloning. Genetic reconstruction. Something far more twisted. The duplicate tilted its head, a wry smile curling its lips. "It is very much possible, and I am the Zenith's cherished experiment. You have been their key, Elias. For in your failures, they saw potential for perfection." Vance's mind raced. All his life, he had borne the scars of battle, the weight of decisions made in desperation. Now, that same face, the face of a man who might represent all the strengths he had lost to despair, stood before him, challenging everything he believed in. "Why?" Vance demanded, his voice low and tremulous. "What is the point of this abomination?" The doppelganger chuckled darkly. "Because you are the heart of our enemy's plan. The Zenith do not simply annihilate, they assimilate. I, the perfected Vance, am here to show you the simple truth: you are their ultimate key. Embrace the power that lies within you. Join them, and together we can bring order to a chaotic galaxy." A heavy silence filled the chamber as Vance's mind struggled with the revelation. His heart thundered with conflicting impulses, the raw desire for freedom clashing with the lure of the power promised by perfection. For a moment, doubt crept into his eyes, but then he remembered the countless lives lost to oppression, the bitter taste of defeat. "I choose freedom," he growled, raising his rifle as if to sever the connection once and for all. Lyra, sensing the turning point, grabbed his arm. "Elias, we can't linger here. Our mission, our chance for humanity, depends on this moment." The doppelganger's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to icy resolve. "Then you leave me no choice," it whispered. With a swift, almost graceful motion, it lunged. The ensuing clash was brutal, a flurry of pulse fire and desperate parries echoing against the living walls. In that critical moment, Vance's resolve hardened. Drawing on every ounce of fading heroism, he fired a single, decisive round straight to the head of his counterpart. The duplicate crumpled to the ground with a final, dissonant gasp, dissolving into the ambient shadows. With the mental assault ended, Vance and Lyra rushed to the main control console embedded in the core structure. The Revenant systems were still coupled with the inverted neural framework of the Zenith stronghold, a precarious bridge that weighed heavy in every calculation. Lyra's fingers danced over the interface as she unleashed a cascaded reprogramming sequence to disrupt the Dominion's hive network. Time is our enemy, she yelled over the clamor of alarms and structural tremors. We need to overload the core to collapse the system from within. In the control chamber, the walls reverberated with the unearthly symphony of a dying citadel. The pulse of the Zenith system grew erratic, displays flickered with warnings as internal structures began to convulse. Vance's heart pounded with the dual awareness of impending victory and irrevocable sacrifice. Activate the override, Lyra. Vance roared, standing upright as debris began to rain down. Her agile hands flew over the panel, and with an explosive surge of energy, the entire core pulsed a deep, throbbing blue before erupting. The effect was instantaneous. A shock wave of raw energy tore through the corridor, shattering the structure in a blinding burst of light. Zenith sentinels convulsed and fell silent, and across the vastness of space, the Dominion's hive mind shuddered under the weight of disintegration. The cacophony of collapsing metal was deafening in its finality. Vance and Lyra sprinted toward the extraction bay, their footsteps echoing against crumbling concrete and flickering holographic displays. As they raced along dim corridors that pulsated with fading Dominion power, every moment felt weighted with the enormity of what they had set in motion. Time to go. Lyra shouted, her voice tinged with both triumph and sorrow. They dove into the Revenant, climbing aboard in a desperate bid for survival as the Zenith core, and the Dominion it sustained, imploded behind them. Outside, as the Revenant tore itself free from the collapsing structure, Vance watched the cataclysmic explosion ripple across the nebula like a dying star. He could hardly register the scene, the mind-numbing light, the absence of all order, and the bittersweet sense that while a pivotal battle had been won, the war was far from over. What now? Vance asked quietly once the vessel was once more adrift in hyperspace. Lyra allowed herself a small, determined smile. Now. We take the fight to them. This victory isn't the end, it's only a new beginning. As the Revenant vanished into hyperspace, Elias Vance felt the stirrings of purpose awaken within him. The memory of his doppelganger, the sacrifice of the fortress, and the unyielding spirit of a scientist who refused to fade from hope, all converged in that single, potent moment. For the first time in years, Vance sensed that his life, despite the scars and remorse, had meaning again. Back aboard his private quarters, a cramped, utilitarian space etched with remnants of past glories, Vance found himself alone with his thoughts. He gazed out at the shimmering cosmos through a panoramic viewport, a silent witness to millennia of cosmic struggle. The recollections of days past, of battles fought and friends lost, swirled unbidden in his mind. Through them, he remembered the man he once was, steadfast, daring, a beacon of hope in a time when humanity's future was all but extinguished. Yet the confrontation with his own doppelganger had left a different seed of disquiet within him. That perfect version of himself, untainted by doubt or remorse, had tempted him with the promise of power and order. In those moments, the line between heroism and authoritarianism blurred dangerously. In a moment of introspection, Vance recalled the vivid flashbacks of his childhood on a struggling Earth, of evenings spent in the glow of neon signs and the humble laughter around a scrappy dinner table. He remembered his father's counsel, "Courage is not knowing no fear, but acting in spite of it." That lesson had defined him then, and now it reasserted itself with renewed insistence. His inner battle, fought in the silent vacuum of space, was as perilous as any physical confrontation. He wondered, what if the Zenith's method, the absorption and perfection of human potential, was a path to a new order? Could the sacrifice of individuality lead to a society where pain was eliminated by design? But then he remembered the imperishable flame of freedom, of every life that had risked everything for the chance to be truly human, flawed yet free. That night, in the solitude of deep space, Vance resolved firmly, he would choose the fraught, unpredictable path of freedom over the cold certainty of engineered perfection. And with that choice came his renewed mandate, one that would lead him to rally more than just a stolen vessel, but the very spirit of rebellion among the ravaged stars. Across the corridors of the Revenant, Lyra Cade was no less reflective. In the quiet hum of her lab, surrounded by salvaged data cores and relics of Zenith technology, she pieced together plans and equations that might unlock humanity's next leap. Her past, too, had been steeped in loss and regret. Once a leading scientist, her career had been derailed by political intrigue and forced exile. Yet each experiment, every hard-fought breakthrough, had only fortified her resolve. Late one night, as she recalibrated the neural disruptor in the solitude of her compartment, Lyra recorded a personal log. Every day is a battle against the dark, both outside and in our hearts. Today, I witnessed the collective will of humanity manifested in the Revenant. Yet the cost is etched in every scar. We must never let despair win, nor allow the tantalizing lure of perfection to erase what it means to be human. Her quiet determination resonated with Vance as well, and in whispered conversations during moments of rest, they shared dreams, regrets, and hopes for a future where freedom and innovation might coexist without oppressive control. With their immediate mission accomplished, Vance and Lyra set their course for the heart of the Zenith Dominion, a volatile region known as the Omega Expanse. Here, space was treacherous and lawless, an arena where rogue patrols and cosmic anomalies abounded, and no human craft had ever returned unscathed. Their path was fraught with dangers both seen and unseen, drifting debris fields imbued with remnants of ancient wars, gravitational anomalies that threatened to swallow whole ships, and ambushes by wandering Dominion frigates seeking to reassert control. Every star along their journey told stories of battles past and expectations uncertain. As the Revenant surged through void-laced corridors of darkness, Vance and Lyra engaged in constant vigilance, charting courses, recalibrating sensors, and sharing tense, strategic dialogues. Vance, gruffly, keep an eye on the sensor readouts. I don't fancy a surprise anytime soon. Lyra, calm but firm, they're adapting, Elias. We need to be even more unpredictable than we already are, if we're to outsmart a foe with a hive mind. Their banter, filled with equal parts camaraderie and the heavy burden of responsibility, formed a rhythm against the stark loneliness of interstellar travel. Throughout these arduous stretches, both became more than partners, they became pillars upon which hope was rebuilt. During a long, silent stretch of hyperspace transit, Vance sat alone in the pilot's chamber, staring out at the stars bending around the vessel. His mind wandered to the battles he had fought, the comrades lost, and the moral dilemmas that continued to haunt him. In the quiet hum of the ship, he scribbled in a battered journal. In the darkness of space, every lost life becomes a star permanently extinguished. Yet sometimes, even the faintest spark can ignite a rebellion. I must remember who I was, and who I must become. These introspective moments, while fleeting, reinforced his commitment. He was not simply a soldier in a far-flung war, he was a man whose choices could alter the course of humanity's destiny. Finally, the Revenant arrived at the outskirts of the Zenith stronghold, a colossal citadel orbiting a dead star, its form draped in an aura of oppressive, otherworldly energy. The structure was a twisted convergence of biomechanical architecture and alien aesthetics, a living monument to the Dominion's unfathomable power. As the Revenant glided toward an exposed docking port, Lyra's voice broke the tense silence. "This is it, the gateway to their heart. Prepare yourself, Elias. We're about to step into a realm where the very walls breathe and conspire." Strapping on additional environmental gear, Vance and Lyra disembarked. Their boots echoed along corridors that shifted seemingly at random, a maze of pulsating flesh and metal. Here, the Dominion's technology was no longer cold and utilitarian but imbued with a sinister vitality. Every surface writhed with the pulse of a living hive mind, and eerie, unearthly sounds reverberated through the fluid passages. It was here, deep within the outer corridors, that they encountered movement beyond the expected Dominion sentinels. A sudden, almost imperceptible rustle in the shifting walls heralded the arrival of a presence that would upend everything they believed they knew. As they rounded a sharp bend in the corridor, a figure materialized, a silhouette bathed in soft, unyielding light. Elias Vance, the figure intoned, its voice reverberating within their minds, familiar yet disconcerting. Vance's breath caught in his throat. The figure stepped forward, and, in a moment that blurred reason from nightmare, it revealed a face identical to his own, every impossible detail replicated in haunting precision. "Why?" Vance demanded, the words choked by a tsunami of conflicting emotions. "Why are you here?" The doppelganger's eyes, mirroring Vance's own, glowed with a certainty that bordered on fanatical. "I am you, or rather, what you could have been without the weight of regrets and weakness. I am the Zenith's ideal, the perfected version. I have been carved from your failures to lead a new order." Lyra's scanner beeped erratically as she tried to make sense of the readings. "This is impossible. How can the Dominion create a duplicate of him?" A cold chuckle hissed from the other Vance. "We assimilate, refine, perfect." In you, they saw both the spark of resistance and the raw potential to become something greater, without the scars, without the human frailties. A violent internal war erupted within Vance as he stared at his mirror image, the embodiment of all he had fought against and the promise of a power unhinged from morality. The corridor's living walls pulsed in sync with his pounding heart as he struggled to choose between the seductive power of perfection and the messy, painful reality of being human. "I choose freedom," Vance finally spat, raising his rifle with trembling resolve. His voice was steady despite the tempest raging inside. In a split-second decision, driven by the memories of loss and the authentic chill of human pain, he fired a single pulse round. It struck true, and his doppelganger fell, dissolving into static with a final, echoing sigh that sent chills down the spine. "Run!" Lyra shouted, seizing the moment as the corridor convulsed, the hive mind of the Dominion fraying at the edges as Lyra initiated a series of overload commands on the main conduit. With the neural cascade triggered, the entire structure began to betray itself. The previously living walls shuddered and splintered, and a deep, resonant hum filled every crevice. The Zenith core, a pulsating heart of alien biotech, began to overload, its energy spiraling into chaotic torrents. Vance and Lyra raced back to the extraction point, dodging fragments of collapsing architecture and blinding bolts of erratic energy. The Revenant awaited outside, its organic hull resonating with the desperate rhythm of their pulse as it prepared for liftoff. "Let's move, now!" Vance bellowed, shoulders straining as he led the sprint. Behind them, the structure quaked violently, and the cacophony of its collapse was nearly unbearable, a symphony of destruction echoing across the void. Inside the extraction bay, as they secured themselves in the battered craft, Lyra initiated the final override on the Dominion conduits. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic, an immense burst of raw energy that rippled across space like the death throes of a dying star. For a fleeting moment, all of existence seemed suspended in that blinding flash. And then, as quickly as it began, it ended. The Zenith hive mind was shattered, its core silenced. In the wake of the core's detonation, the Revenant sailed into the ink-black tapestry of hyperspace, leaving behind the smoldering ruins of a once mighty Dominion citadel. Battleground transmissions across the Omega expanse revealed that while the Zenith Dominion still existed, its grip had loosened, its forces entangled in confusion and despair. On board the Revenant, amid the flashes of emergency lights and quiet morning, Vance and Lyra took stock of the victory, a Pyrrhic, yet essential triumph. The loss of their doppelganger, a manifestation of what the Dominion could create from human essence, weighed heavily upon Vance. Yet he was also buoyed by the knowledge that the spark of human freedom had not been snuffed out. "Thank you," Vance finally said to Lyra, his voice raw with gratitude and sorrow. "For reminding me of who I am. Of who we must be." Lyra, still catching her breath, managed a small, resilient smile. "Our fight is not over, Elias. We have only just given humanity a fighting chance. Now we take the fight to them." As the Revenant hurtled through hyperspace back toward human-controlled space, Vance found solace in the quiet moments where introspection mingled with the echoes of distant battles. In his private cabin, illuminated by soft, shifting starlight, he reviewed old logs and photographs from his past, the faces of comrades lost, the moments of victory and defeat alike. Each memory was bittersweet, but together they formed the mosaic of a man who had learned the true meaning of sacrifice and freedom. In one photograph, he saw himself as a young officer, hopeful and brave, his eyes alight with the promise of tomorrow. That image, juxtaposed with the hardened veteran he had become, sparked both melancholy and a fierce will to continue the legacy of freedom. "I must be more than a ghost," he murmured to the silent room. "I must lead, not by the cold perfection of a Dominion experiment, but by the living, imperfect flame of humanity." Lyra's research and the stolen Zenith technology began to show promising signs of unlocking new defensive measures. Collaborating with engineers and ex-military scientists, she spearheaded efforts to reverse-engineer Dominion tech, hopeful that one day, humanity could not only defend itself, but prevail with a force uniquely its own. The Dominion may have been weakened that day in the Omega expanse, but the war was far from over. The battle had sown seeds of hope across human space, a declaration that humanity's spirit, though battered by centuries of conflict, was indomitable. Across the colonies and fleets of the post-war galaxy, whispers of the Revenant's daring mission spread like wildfire. Soldiers recalled the sacrifice of a man who had defended freedom. Scientists marveled at the ingenuity that had repurposed the enemy's own technology against them, and, in the hearts of the people, the promise of a new dawn began to rise. On a newly established command vessel, the Aurora's Vow, General Marcus Darren convened a council of Allied leaders, including representatives from human colonies, independent warbands, and even sympathetic defectors from Dominion ranks. There, under holographic star maps and flickering lights, strategies were laid out for future campaigns, diplomatic overtures, and the forging of alliances that would one day shape a lasting peace. Today, we stand united as a beacon against tyranny, Darren declared, his voice resounding with resolve. Not for revenge alone, but for the future of every soul in our galaxy. We have suffered, we have learned. Now, we build a new legacy, one of freedom, unity, and unyielding hope. For Captain Elias Vance and Dr. Lyra Cade, the memory of their harrowing mission on the Zenith stronghold would forever remain etched in their souls, a constant reminder of the high price of freedom and the necessity to guard it. As the Revenant and its compatriot ships ventured into the darkness of deep space, each battle, each victory, and each loss would contribute to a greater narrative, a story of humanity's struggle against overwhelming odds and its refusal to surrender to despair. Late one starlit evening, as Vance stood on the observation deck of the Aurora's Vow, gazing at nebulae that painted hopes and nightmares in equal measure, he whispered to himself. We choose freedom. We choose life. And as long as we stand together, no force, no matter how monstrous, can ever silence the human spirit. In that moment, among the silent stars and the gentle hum of a ship hurtling toward destiny, the future of humanity shimmered, a fragile, brilliant beacon of hope, forged in the fires of endless cosmic war and the resilience of those who dared to dream.